This is Uncle Steffen. Uncle Steffen is going to explain to you what is going on in American politics and what's wrong with it. So pay attention. There'll be a quiz at the end of this. Here you have what American political parties look like. You have the GOP, the Republicans, you have the Democrats, and then you have something that's called no party or independent. Those are people who can't make up their minds. And basically, what happens is everybody has to jam into either the Democratic or Republican Party when it comes to candidates or when it comes to elections, because those are the only two political parties that make any difference, the only ones that ever win elections and so on. But in reality, in a country like the United States, you have all kinds of other people who now are forced into one of the two parties. For example, if you are a real conservative, very, very conservative, you are going to try to basically influence or take over the Republican Party. You see that? So the Republican Party is basically the party that really, really conservative people go to. And if you are really, really liberal and you are sort of a socialist, well, where do you go? You have to go over here to the Democratic Party. So the Democrats and Republicans are constantly under pressure because they are trying to be everything to everybody, more or less, and they therefore become hostages to especially the ultra-liberals for the Democrats and the ultra-conservatives for the GOP. That's why you're seeing all this fighting going on in the Republican Party right now between the Tea Party people, who are these very, very conservative people, and the regular mainstream, what they call the traditional GOP leadership. You also see President Obama, who is a Democrat over here, now suddenly coming under a tremendous amount of attack and pressure from the very liberal people who voted for him and who don't like the policies that he has been engaged in and the way that he's developed the economy and jobs and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So kids, what's the solution? How do we solve this problem? Well, the Europeans do this a little differently. In fact, most countries in the world don't have just two parties. They have many more parties. So here's what could happen. What if we had a separate socialist party that could run candidates that would have some success? They would have some members in the House and Senate. They would have some governors and some other representatives in places where people are really, really liberal. So instead of having to go to the Democratic Party, they could have their own party. They could run their own candidates, and they could leave the Democrats alone to be sort of moderately liberal. And what could happen over here on the other side, where there are very, very conservative people? Well, you could have a conservative party. So, in other words, conservatives who are really, really conservative and who are not at all happy with the Republican Party could have their own conservative party over here, and they could run candidates. They might win some elections, and then you could still have some people over here who are still undecided or independent. But I can tell you from my experience, the people who say that they are no party are people who are really not that happy with either the Republicans or the Democrats and would like to see some other choices. So if we had more than two parties, kids, in the United States, we had independent people who can vote however they want, we had a very conservative party, we had the Republican Party, moderately conservative, the Democrats, moderately liberal, and then over here a socialist party or a very liberal party like they do in Europe, then the political parties could appeal to people's specific interests, and the two big parties wouldn't have to be constantly trying to please everybody and create these awful situations that we have now, where there is, in fact, not really a lot of room in each party for those very, let's say, outlier wings of them. And we might have a better political system. So that, kids, is how we could solve the crisis in American politics. And I have a lot of suggestions on how that could be done, because other countries do that. You know, it's not a big deal. You can do it by changing the voting laws a little bit and having proportional representation and various other things, so that not only the person who gets the highest number of votes, which will either be a Democrat or Republican, wins, but other people who could get significant votes could also win. You could stick a Green Party in there if you wanted to as well somewhere. So you could have 4, 6 parties, and it would be kind of like the grocery store, where we don't have just 2 cereals and 2 soups. We have a lot of different cereals and a lot of different soups in a lot of different flavors. Thanks, kids. This is Uncle Steffen for InsiderIowa.com, giving you a lesson in politics. Bye-bye.